Welcome, everyone, back to the house of Mr. Christopher. There we go. Got the timer. We're going to try for 10 minutes today. So it's been a little while since I've seen you, but I'm happy to be here. Please like, subscribe, share if you know anybody who's a history geek like you and me. And also, please feel free to share in the comments your ideas, your thoughts, any answers to the questions. And we appreciate your feedback. And I really endeavor to answer everyone who participates. So let's talk about holding it together. That's what the topic was of our last class, right? Our last workshop at the house of Mr. Christopher. Now, if I were to say hold it together, what's the first thing that kind of comes to your mind when I say hold it together? Anything comes to your mind? Well, I'm going to pull up a quote on holding it together, and I'd like to see what you think about it. David Levithan says, "You spend so much time, so much effort trying to hold yourself together, and then everything falls apart anyway." It's kind of blue, right? The vibe of this quote. Maybe we can sew it together throughout this class, or weave that idea in this workshop that we're doing today, this learning pod that we're doing today. But on a positive note, what holds something together? Let's take a instrument. How about that? When you think of an instrument that holds together, let's talk about that. A violin. What holds it together? It's not the wood, it's tension, right? It's balanced tension. If it's too tight, the string snaps. If it's too loose, no music. It needs structure, it needs a bridge, it needs the tuning pegs, it needs a shared rhythm. Would you agree? Now, zoom out from a violin to civilizations, countries, governments. They're the same, right? They need structure. What provides structure to a civilization or a government or a country? Well, their laws, their institutions, their systems that outlive grandiose personalities. They need a shared belief, a story people agree to live inside, right? And there's a managed tension, right? Because there's always some sort of stress. There's an economic stress, there's cultural friction, there's expansion in, out, there's changing and evolving values. So the question isn't whether tension exists, it's can it be balanced? Trust erodes, nation strain. Shared purpose fades, cohesion weakens. So the baby steps of a country where people began to believe that they need each other, some semblance of rules and order matter, tomorrow is worth building. So that's when a country holds together. But a violin isn't held together by wood alone, and a nation is held together by trust, structure, and a shared purpose, and much more. Let's look at one shared structure that holds a nation together. What do you see? Immediately, I'd say 350 million people plus. If you're living on the Western Hemisphere, the United States, immediately you can probably tell what this scene is. And this is 1621, oil on canvas by Jean-Léon Gérôme Ferris. It's called The First Thanksgiving. And put on your art critic hats. Any challenges to this painting? What are the challenges that you see for this painting where you're like, yeah, I don't know about that? Well, it's a fictionalized depiction of the traditional first Thanksgiving in which the Wampanoag, anachronistically, which means belonging or appropriate to a period other than that being portrayed. Let's see how your detail is. They're actually wearing Plains tribes headdresses. And if you look over here in the corner, this pilgrim is wearing a pretty contemporary cowboy hat. And at least there are about 5 pilgrim women are present. And I believe only 4 had survived the previous winter. So there's a lot of things that are a little bit off here. The description of these events have been characterized by both indigenous people of the United States and academic scholars for how it renders obscure or makes history unclear. The history, particularly relationships between the pilgrims and the indigenous people of the region, are misrepresented. Many modern-day Thanksgiving foods were also not eaten at the feast as assumed, and the aftermath of that event is usually ignored. So you can do a deep dive on your own to see what really was this first meal about. But just to give you a heads up, what the pilgrims ate at their Thanksgiving festival, they didn't have corn on the cob, apples, pears, potatoes, cranberries, and no one knows if they really had turkey, although they were used to eating turkey. But for a free turkey dinner, what was the only food we know that they had for sure? Why don't you place it in the comments? And I'll wait a day before putting it in the comments. But what does this picture actually represent? What's the purpose of this picture? It's a communal meal, right? Eating together. And when you eat together, right, it kind of brings people together, right? It's hard to kind of have bad relations with someone you're breaking bread with, right? So this is the Thanksgiving Day to annual holiday in the United States and Canada. And it's celebrating the harvest and the other blessings of the past year. It's observed on the 4th Thursday in November in the United States and the 2nd Monday in October in Canada. Now, what is Thanksgiving Day to the American people, or to you if you're a Canadian? And if you're in another culture around the world, is there a day such as this where you and your families come together? What does it mean to you? For many, it's a day when families and friends gather to express gratitude for the year's blessings over a shared feast. However, the holiday has evolved from a harvest celebration to a national tradition of togetherness and thankfulness through traditions or centuries of tradition building, myth making, and cultural change. But at its heart, for many people, it's about gratitude. You take a day off work, you're with your family, maybe you have gratitude for friends, health, or maybe your own small personal victories. The Thanksgiving dinner today, I think you can recognize it in a second. Let's pull up a picture. And of course, this is not the Thanksgiving that the pilgrims had back in that time period. The Thanksgiving traditional dinner usually includes roasted turkey, mashed potatoes, gravy, stuffing, green beans, pumpkin pie, or sweet potato pie, depending on where you're from. Maybe there's some mac and cheese, some sweet potato casserole. And other families may include dishes from their cultural heritage. It's a warm, cozy holiday. Many people travel long distances to be with their families. Of course, football games are playing on TV in one of the amazing cities in the world, New York City. They have a Thanksgiving parade, which is an iconic event in New York. There are floats, giant balloons. But here's the question for you. Were the Americans and the Canadians the only culture with a day of thankfulness? Here is your hint. This is your hint, beautiful people. What do you see? Cereal. How's that a hint? I'm in the red already. Oh my goodness. All right, let's see if we can cram a few things together. Why cereal? Well, let's look at the etymology of the word cereal. Are you ready? Here we go. The etymology, or the history of a word. I love etymologies of words. It says 1832, grass yielding edible grain and cultivated for food. Okay, we can understand that. It says French, céréales. I hope I pronounced it right. So all my friends in the French language, forgive me. But notice what it says here, Latin, cerealis, of grain, originally of Ceres. Who is this? The goddess of agriculture, the Roman goddess of agriculture. Let's check her out. Here's a sculpture of Ceres. A Roman goddess. This is an 18th century statuette. The work is made from terracotta. And it was intended as a model for a larger marble sculpture. This is in the collection of the Metropolitan Museum of Art. So she's the goddess of agriculture and the harvest in Roman mythology. So agriculture, there's some other things wrapped up with her. She also had a counterpart in Greece, and her name was Demeter. Agriculture, fertility, motherly love, marital laws, and the common folk. Her favor would bring humankind plentiful harvests and fruitful crops, but her wrath brought blight, drought, and famine. So usually she's depicted as a matron, and her symbols included the sickle. Do you see the sickle? See it right here? Shafts of grain and the cornucopia. So her Greek counterpart is Demeter. And Demeter, what made Demeter big time? What made Demeter big time is this. She was one of 12. Why is that special? She was one of the 12 Olympian gods. See what's interesting about religions and cultures throughout history? They had a god for everything. They had a god for this, they had a god for that, they had a god for this, they had a god for that, they had a god for agriculture, a god for sea and horses, a god for war and destruction, a god for moon and hunting. It's a contrast of those who were in the Judeo-Christian faiths, where there was one powerful God over everything, right? So the 12 gods of Mount Olympus were the most important deities in ancient Greece. They had human qualities. They were pretty capricious, though. They could show great kindness, but they could dish out some terrible punishment. They had lots of arguments. They had love affairs. They protected their boys on earth, their mortal boys on earth. But each god had a more serious role to play in the Greek view of the world. And a lot of them represented ideals and features of the human condition. The Romans, they loved the Greeks. So they absorbed the architecture, the philosophy, and even the religion. So, do you think you could name some of these Greek gods? Electricity and lightning, wisdom and strategy, love and beauty, messages and travel, If you can name 5 of these, you will get an all-inclusive cruise to Staten Island. How about that? All right. So place it in the comments if you can name 5 of them. If you name all 10, let's grab a coffee together. So Demeter was one of the gods of the 12 Olympians. And remember, her name was Ceres in Rome. So the Romans celebrated a festival to her which honored her, and it involved music, parades, games, sports, and a Thanksgiving feast. What was the purpose of celebrations in Rome? Well, Roman festival activities, during the Roman holidays, people would go down the streets to and from the temples that demonstrate their devotion to the god or goddess. They dressed in their finest. They left offerings to beg for favors of the deities. Sometimes animal sacrifices were made. And the state would often sponsor larger parties so that all could participate in the celebration. And this is the way the magistrates could curry favor with the citizens by trying to win over their votes. So, one way that you can hold it together, hold a country together, hold a civilization together, hold a culture together, are what? One way are holidays, right? So that's what we covered today. Hold it down, hold it together. When we meet again, we're going to talk about apologies. Apologies. It's too late to apologize. We're going to talk about that next time. See you then. Please participate, share with people who you think would be interested in this. I always love if you have new topics that you'd like me to discuss. And I will see you next time, beautiful people. Keep digging, keep searching. Remember, history, it's a journey. Take care.